Good evening. It's a Skeetnet special. We're not talking about COVID. We're not talking about mishaps in the government. We're talking to an Isle of Man legend. And I sincerely mean that. Someone that has shaped social history. And that man is Alan Shea. Good evening, Alan.
Good evening. How's everyone today?
Very well as we can be. The island is holding up, and it's 2021. And let's turn the clock back 30 years to 1991, when you featured big time in the headlines, not just locally but all around the world. And the purpose of doing this broadcast this evening is to share the story, to look at the history, because there's going to be a lot of people out there on the Isle of Man who've grown up, who've been born into the world since then, and they'll have no idea about the landscape that we had on this fair isle, which caused you to be a human rights activist. I think that's the best way to put it. You were fighting for the rights of the gay community. And what I'd like to do this evening is just give us a walkthrough of how this came about, what caused you to do what you did and make an imprint on the history of the Isle of Man.
Well, what it is, basically, I came here, in 1983, a really nice year. And I lived a normal life, an happy life, a gay lifestyle on the island. I did not know I was breaking any laws. Like I said a long time ago, it was like a day trip going to London. I've been in the Isle now like 37 years. So only when it came to light that I was actually breaking the law when the Sexual Offences Act 1990 appeared. And just before then, there was a purge on a local toilet where people were arrested. And a young man called Julian, who was only 18 years of age, drank half a bottle of vodka and got a gun, and he shot himself through the mouth. And I thought to myself then that things need to change, laws have got to be changed. And so basically, a group of gay guys that lived on the island, we all got together, financed by myself and my partner, to get this law passed. And everybody we asked on the island, the gay in the island, is what would you like from this? And he said, well, the simple thing was the law to be changed. And that was the start of my
You've just knocked me for six in about 30 seconds there, Alan. Do you mind if we just backpedal a bit? If we can just go back and we can kind of set the scene. So we're talking about the 1980s, and we're talking about an Isle of Man which itself was changing. It was becoming more affluent. There was more business happening. The lifestyles were changing. So you came to the island when? In the early 80s, yeah?
1983, around about September, October, I arrived on the island. I mean, I remember specifically, it was the first time on a ferry, and my partner worked at a steam packet company, and I was violently ill. There was one of the rooms on the boat they weren't using, they let me go in there because I was that bad. But I came in '83. I've never went back.
So you were leaving northwest England. I take it that there must be a hint of Scouse in there somewhere. Is there? I'm not sure.
Very strong Scouse. Very strong Scouse.
So, tell me, before you left, I'm guessing. How old were you? 20s, maybe early 20s.
I was 20 when I arrived on the Isle of Man.
So tell me, what was the scene like for a gay man in Liverpool before you left?
Well, a lot of clubbing, a lot of partying. It's just like that production law, really. It's a sin. It wasn't as bad. We just went out clubbing and enjoying life and so on. So
and really,
it's just a north.
And really, at that time in the early 80s, attitudes were beginning to change in the UK. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, see, in the 80s, before I came to Ireland, I had my first partner. I mean, the law in it then was 21. You got to remember. So my first partner, I was 18 and he was 30. And we lived in the village called AMY in Herefordshire, where we had a circle of friends like April Hashley, and who's a famous transgender from Liverpool. And they were our circle of friends, and and then me and my partner, then we decided that it wasn't going anywhere. Decided to call it a day. Came back to Liverpool. I've known my partner now when I was 16, but we didn't get together till I was 20.
So we've come to the Isle of Man, and I can imagine the transition was something else. You come into a place that was almost medieval in attitude.
Well, it was a bit rough. I would say it's a bit rough. The local pub I end up which I built a good friendship round, and so our friends from those days was, believe it or not, the Rosemount pub on the terrace. Now I went there for years when people, same managers, had it, and then I didn't have any problems going into that pub. It's only when I decided to venture into other pubs there was a problem. As a gay man, I mean, now and again I did used to go to the Douglas pub. There was a bit of trouble in there. The Clarendon was owned by a good friend of mine. There was no problem. But certain pubs, there were issues.
Let's just go back there. You say there's problems. Are you saying that you were identified and picked on? Would that be about right?
Yeah. There was some abuse. But that was between like 83 to about 89. But when I started going public, then it became a situation where I didn't venture out as much because of certain threats were issues, and so basically I remained in the house almost. I went out with a group of people, mainly straight friends, if there was a problem, because I don't believe in violence, I don't believe in fighting. So it's
so tell me, how would you mix with other gay friends at that time on the island? For social stuff.
I mixed with some lesbian friends of mine, because it wasn't against the law for lesbians on the island, so they were legal. And I knew a few gays that I mixed with that my partner knew. We built friendships that way. But only when I think the law, we had little venues that we were going to, and now and again we use like people use a hotel called the Waverley, and the police used to come down the stairs to see who were all in there, just to make their presence known, that they knew where we were. So
you're saying that the authorities, the police, were attending because of the sexuality side of things? Is that your perception? Yeah. And it wouldn't be because of licensing or underage drinking or something like that?
No, I think the police just wanted to make damn sure they knew that they knew where we were, and you know what you got to understand is people didn't realise, and especially the police definitely knew, that homosexuality was not against the law. The only thing that was against the law was the sexual act was against the law.
Yeah.
But the police pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. And I think, in my view, is that they went too far. I mean, people walking along the promenade stopped and told, go home or we'll arrest you for importuning. People on the quay going into, just waiting for somebody, move, get away, you're queer. And these were the comments from the police. I mean, as a policeman yourself, I'm sure you can enlighten some of your viewers exactly what the police were like. You want to, you probably witnessed it better than I did.
I think for the purposes of this broadcast, and I think we've got to be all up front, I served as a police officer from 1986 And that was when we had the new chief constable, who was a man called Robin Oak. And I served until 25 years after that. So whilst this was going on, whilst you had come to the island and up to 1991, 92, I would have been a uniformed officer, young in service, and I think we'll come to it later. Some of the things that happened, but I do remember the attitudes in the police, and I think it would be like just like that TV show, like Life on Mars. Have you seen that? Where
no.
But it was very very much what can I say? A lot of bravado, a lot of testosterone. There certainly weren't any openly gay officers in the force, which I'm pleased to say that's changed, and the force has come a long way since then. But I do understand, and you did mention there about the offence of importuning, and this is like going back to the Victorian era, isn't it? And I'm sure you must have felt that. You must have felt that you must have been looking over your shoulder, or if there's a police car or a police officer around. Did you start to feel paranoid about this?
Well, my team said, well, it's because I was a campaigner as well. It's basically that what people don't understand was the police were actually outside my home, stopping people from coming in, asking where they've been. My home was raided by the police, looking for an IRA terrorist called Mad Dog McGee. Two officers appeared at the house here, and in the look of an IRA terrorist, you'd expect armed police in the street cornered off, and you didn't have a warrant. I did invite them in. I mean, they even inspected people. I'm sure they remember in the late 80s, the freezer box was so big, and they even looked in there. Said, "We wouldn't be in there. You wouldn't be able to fit." But they were looking for stuff. They wanted to try and get me on something.
So it was a fishing expedition, and were they looking?
I presume so, yeah, because after the campaign, what we did, then we got, which was a great thing for the Isle of Man, and I put the Isle of Man in the spotlight more than I put them in, is Amnesty International came to the Isle of Man and did an investigation on all the arrests that were done. And then Amnesty International put me under there as a political protector. They were my protectors from the Isle of Man Constabulary. So I was under the Amnesty International protection. So if something happened to me, they'd be answerable to that organisation.
I'm just picking up on some comments here just before we go any further. So we've got from Dale. Alan, but we have felt he had gone back in time when he got off the boat. Thank God how times have changed. So we've shared that, and then we're just going to pull in. Right, it's Simon Madrill. Robin Oak has a lot to answer for. He was James Anderson's right-hand man in Greater Manchester who described people with AIDS as swirling in a cesspool of their own making. Now, I think it's fair to say that Mr. Oak, he served under James Anderson, and they were both Christian, firm, strong Christians. There's no question about that. I think Anderson, he converted to Catholicism, and as we know, Mr. Oak was big into the Baptist church here, and he had beliefs that were probably in tandem with James Anderson. And for those attitudes against homosexuality to be practiced by the force out on the streets is quite a claim to make, isn't it?
Yeah, but that phrase that Simon just used there, "accepted of our own making," that was also put in the production. It's called "It's a Sin." In that portion was mentioned in that. And obviously, the destination of change was mentioned in Wales to protect people's identity. That comment was made in that production. And Robin Oak that we got was a disciple, one of his disciples. I don't. The rumor we heard that he had his little prayer meetings up at the police station when he was here, and he's a horrible man, and he's got a lot to answer for what he's done.
I think the activities of James Anderton are well documented, especially around Canal Street when that was just emerging, and I think the tactics were perhaps echoed here in the Isle of Man, because there must have been a tipping point. Okay, there must have been a tipping point where something happened. It's in the 1980s where you and the people around you actually thought, hang on, we're getting singled out, we're getting picked on, we're getting bullied, we're getting victimised purely for the way we feel. And this is at a time when other crimes, were going on. I think that the burglary rate was quite high then. So what happened?
There's a lot of gay men. Yeah, a lot of gay men on the Isle of Man, especially people that have got to understand. The Isle of Man philosophy was to marry, have children. That was the order of things on the Isle of Man. So basically, you had bisexual men who wanted to meet other men, and the only way they could do it, they obviously heard about Noah's Park toilets and other facilities, and that's how they met. And then, obviously, the police knew what was going down because they installed in the light bulbs cameras in the light bulbs to try and catch these men. But what the other thing about this is, when these facilities weren't being used by the gay men, there were families going in there with their children using a toilet, and they would have been getting filmed, which is completely wrong. And then suddenly, all these men were arrested and interrogated, where people died, which people don't understand. People died. Some people have lost their father. A mother's lost her son. And Margaret, who lost her child at 18, and it's a horrible thing to go through, And what Margaret would explain to me was, 3 to 4 days after he died, the police knocked at the door and handed Margaret his clothes. How wrong is this? If this is the mentality of the police force in the Isle of Man in the 1980s, to do that to a mother is disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And, the Isle of Man will not issue an apology. I think he should.
I'll just try and troll the memory banks at that time, and you talked about the toilets at Noah's Park, which were frequented. And from memory, they installed some surveillance equipment in there. I think it's quite a primitive CCTV camera, nothing like what they could do these days. But I do recall that there were observations taking place, and the comings and goings. It was like, and this is just like the canteen talk around the station, it was like gossip. Oh, you'll never guess who's been seen today. Oh, you'll never guess who's been arrested. And there was a very frivolous attitude to all this. But this was at a time when there was no Police and Criminal Evidence Act, was there?
No, and there was no... there wasn't a pay set. So basically, when you walked in, like you have now, if you're arrested in the Isle of Man now, they've got to play the 2 tapes with your advocate present. You didn't have those rights then. The police also asked, because we did ask some of the people that were arrested, the police were insisting that these people handed over names and addresses of other gay men on the Isle of Man, which is totally wrong, and which affects more people than you think. And people like that did not use public toilets. They were basically asking, right, who else are gay? Come on, give us some. What are the names? That is wrong. That is wrong. You should never have done that.
I'm just putting some comments on the screen. They're coming in thick and fast, and just one from Simon there has picked up on exactly the same thing. So almost it was like a chain of confessions where one confession would lead to, say, another, 2-3 people being brought in.
The last about this one is, and I'll give you a brilliant scenario on this one. A young guy lived in Ballasalla. He left his home in Ballasar, decided to have a little drive all the way to Ramsey to Murrah Park, followed by the police. And as soon as he entered Murrah Park Tour, the police went in there and arrested him. They followed him all the way. Absolutely crazy. You know.
I'm just picking up on some of the comments coming on. We've got to be careful exactly what we say, but there's reference to the interview rooms of defendants at police headquarters being bugged, which is documented, and anyone that's interested, they can search online for reports of that. I'm not doubting that fact at all, but I think it sets the tone of a style of investigation that perhaps wasn't modern enough for this particular issue. It was something which seemed very blunt, uncaring, and ultimately resulted in the very tragic deaths of people on bail, males who'd been charged with offences or they'd been through court, which is absolutely despicable. But then, looking further than that, Alan, what was the impact on the lives of not just the families, but everyone connected in this circle? It must have been absolutely horrific.
Well, see, because of the virus on the Isle of Man, I do go round to see Margaret. His son was Julian, and she misses their child, and she does say the police need to apologise for what they did, and I can't understand. I know everyone says we've had apologies from the Isle of Man government. That good, but the police must issue these families either a private apology or a public one. I want one for the way they treated me, and they raided my home. They watched people come in and out. There's rumours my telephone line was bugged. Thank God we got a special number from the United Kingdom that we dialed as an international phone number and would check that, make sure our line was clear. So basically, we got a number from the United Kingdom to make sure our phone lines were clear from bugs.
I wouldn't.
Which the element is.
I wouldn't doubt that at all. I'm not privy to that knowledge, but that would not surprise me. And this is where the measures that you were probably seen as a threat to national security.
Yeah, I think the police here in the late 80s, 90s, they were a law upon themselves. They were out of control. They were on a witch hunt, which I've always publicly said. They wanted gays for sport. It doesn't matter how people look at it. That's what they did. They owe us an apology. This police force here at the moment, I've got nothing wrong with them. I'm be absolutely honest with you, I don't really trust the police. Absolutely honest with you, because of after the way you were treated in the 90s. I can't say one nice word against for the police. I don't trust them. And every time I see the police outside, they never smile. They look so grumpy. A little smile now.
I'm really sorry to hear that, and that shouldn't be the way, especially with the achievements you've made. I think by not having an independent police complaints authority is a big thing. I think that's absolutely massive. And if the Isle of Man had that facility where there was an overseeing independent eye on the activities, I think that would be absolutely wonderful. But that's not happened. I just want to come back again to the lead up to the famous Tynwald Day and the preparation that went into the petition. Just for people watching who aren't quite clear on where we were at that time, what were the triggers that led you to do that?
Well, I wanted the law changed as it was for man and woman, or man and guy. The age of consent was 16 for heterosexuals, and we wanted the law exactly the same. So what I did was I went to London in June. I had a meeting with Outrage, which is a very strong political group, founded by a great man called Peter
Peter
Tatchell.
Tatchell, yeah.
And what it was, I invited Outrage to come along and do a little demonstration on Tilmwood Day. And the costume had its first day out in London Pride in 1991. And then we brought the costume back to the Isle of Man ready for Tilmwood with Outrage.
Yeah.
And we put the three legs of man onto the uniform. And then the government officer's phone number was 626262. And so we had the petition ready. Also, government officer's phone number right here. The three legs of man and the pink triangle as a prisoner.
So just tell me, Alan. Tell me. Let's hold your horses. So, did you have anyone advising you, helping you legally? Because putting a petition together isn't the most simplest of things, and you had the backing from Outrage. So how supportive were Outrage? Let's just go back a little bit as to their input.
Outrage, the petition was done by an advocate. That was done by an advocate. There was two advocates. One did the petition. I also had an advocate, which I won't name for reasons.
Sure.
Who was basically, he was a very high-ranking advocate on the Isle of Man, that I went to for any information that could help me or to protect me more. So there were two advocates involved. Outrage was there to, because on the Isle of Man there was myself, and in the background there was other gay people in the background also advising. But Outrage was there to show more of a demonstration to promote the costume in a sense. And so what we did with Outrage and myself, the LGBT people that were involved in the group, in the organisation, was we basically faxed every TV channel that we can get our hands on. If our fax machines were going left, right, and centre, to tell them what we were about to do. And basically, as witnessed on all the videos, you see all the vans with the satellite dishes and stuff like that. But upstairs here, the day before, we were actually being filmed upstairs. And the film crew upstairs, the main film crew that were actually filming us, was CNN. They came from Canada to film us, to do the demonstration. And those days we didn't have Skype. A friend of mine, Hazel, MHK, she said she saw it on Sky and was going round. So, it reached the right place.
I think we've got to put this into perspective, because this is before the days of the internet and communication, which is just done in a flash. So the organisation, it was done through fax machines. It was done through normal telephone calls with a dial on the front. Remember those? There's no mobile phones or text messages. So where was the energy? Was it Peter Tatchell? Did he make this a focus? Right, we're on a strong platform.
The energy was based,
and of course,
the energy was based on the Isle of Man. I'm very strong on my views. I see myself not as like Peter, like just what I like to get out there and do the business. I'm not just messing about on camera. Maybe get a few pictures taken, but it was here with my other half, Stephen Martin, who's no longer with us. He passed away. Martin had HIV, and he was treated very badly at Nobles Hospital. It's basically like that. Again, it's a sin. He was basically treated the same way, and he went back to Manchester, which he got a bit more respect. But but he was involved, and Martin was heavily involved. But I was basically the voice, the face of the campaign.
And of course, there was some political happenings in Tynwald, and there was a vote, wasn't there? Originally,
there was a vote. It was a vote. I mean, I did a few demonstrations at the Manx Labour Party in Ballarcella in the day. So two of their members voted for, one voted against. But it was. Miles Walker gave them a choice, and they were members of the ministerial. Where, as a minister, he should have turned around and said, "No, you vote in one block vote for this law change." But Miles Walker did it completely different. So.
I think, Alan, I would urge anyone to look into your YouTube channel and look at these videos from that era. They're quite something, aren't they? There's a documentary, I think, that was made by, could have been the BBC, I don't know, but it gives an overview over FSFO, yourself, and it gives a fantastic insight into the attitudes on the island. I'll say no more, but I'll urge anyone to just take some time and dip into that. So when we're getting close to Tynwald, and I'm not quite sure about the timescale here, there was almost, you must have been confident that this was going to get converted, that the laws were going to change.
We wanted the law changed because what we did was we also wrote letters to the British Home Office, or Margaret Thatcher at the time, who was a very homophobic woman. But the Home Office did send us a letter back saying that if the Isle of Man does not change these laws, they will do so at their earliest opportunity. And that we had that letter, and we published that letter. We copied those letters out, and we sent it to every MHK at the time. So basically, the Isle of Man, we were forcing them to do this law because there was a lot of hostility in there, and we thought it was the only way was basically do the demonstration on Tynwald Day, as it is now. It's now 16 now. But the petition needed to be picked up, but no one touched that petition. No one. But basically, it did pass, just passed. So there were some still homophobic people in there.
I must look up that bit of history. So that's one to do a bit of research on. So I think when it just comes to explaining the law, we talked about the toilets before, and where males were getting arrested and charged and humiliated and going through the court process. And I just need to put this in perspective. The actual law that changed wasn't really in relation to that, was it?
No. The law was for in private. The law was for two consenting adults in private. But what people don't understand was there wasn't any specific venues to go to anyway. People went to public toilets in the gay world. It's called cottaging. It's like a cruise. It's a lot of cruising areas that a lot of single gay men do. And bisexual men who don't want to be identified as LGBTQ. So basically, they just go and have their 5 minutes of pleasure and then go back to their wives. And but unfortunately, Nervous Park was under camera and they got arrested and got caught. But the law was for. I got people to say, I said they were breaking law. I'm sorry, but these people had nowhere else to go to. Where could they actually get their, urge?
And this was about the Isle of Man being behind the times, I'd say, because in the UK, certainly in the likes of Liverpool and beyond, there would have been venues for people to meet. Wouldn't there?
Yeah, a lot of venues. Yeah, there are a lot of venues, but again, it's the same thing applies, doesn't it? Really, you got all the gay venues to go to, but if you're a bisexual man, you can't really go there because if you got a wife and children, you're gonna. So, like Liverpool, they still had what they call a cruising scene, which is a public toilet scene, and that it does. People do it. It was like a risk in Liverpool. You didn't get arrested. They weren't arrested. They got a total telling off. In the Isle of Man, you got arrested, your name put in the paper, and publicly humiliated.
And this was the issue because the Isle of Man was perhaps very, what can I say, stuck in their attitudes, not really open and accepting. There's no question about that.
I do think, I do think, I'll be absolutely honest with you, I think most of the Manx people were in favour of law reform. The only people that didn't want this law going through was the Allemande Police Force. The Allemande Police Force, by harassing and humiliating gay men for their own pleasure, is disgusting, and they should apologise. The majority of the people on this island, I think, were and weren't bothered with it. We did what we had to do to get this law passed, and if you ask me the same question, would I do it again? You better would, and I would do it 10 times harder than I did last time. I mean, that costume, that award, my partner was against it because he's a Manxman. He did not want me to wear it, and a few people objected me wearing it. But we had a vote, and the vote carried that I wore the costume. I wore the costume. I bought it. I got my friends round. We painted it, and we done it. And I'm proud I wore that costume.
I think
it's got a good home. It's living at the Manx Museum. It's part of the Manx history. It's there. When people come to this island, media.
I think it'd be fair to say that at the time, the Isle of Man Constabulary just simply wasn't geared up to deal with a community like this. I think the supervision that were managing this campaign were completely out of their depth, and just the lack of understanding, sensitivity has been demonstrated by what happened, from what I know and from what you know. And a lot of lives were damaged, for what? There's no question about it. In the modern day, it wouldn't transpire like that, because I think at the time, did they have about 30 to 40 persons, males, put in court for that?
Yeah, there were a lot of people arrested. Yeah, there was a lot of people arrested, and a lot of people's lives were destroyed. One family member heard it on a Manx radio that his son was a death on Manx radio. Before the police even informed the family, Manx radio released it. I mean, that's not right. That's not right.
So
that someone's ended their life, and then this Manx radio broadcasting it on Manx radio before the police could inform the family. I mean, that's disgusting. Just disgusting.
That sounds absolutely horrific. So if at the time they'd thought about this differently, and at the time they'd engaged with someone like yourself on friendly terms to say, look, the business about cottaging, this needs to be cured and dealt with, and kind of both groups, there needs to be a halfway point. It could be that the toilets simply could have just been managed a different way. It could have been dealt with by information. It could have been dealt with 101 ways other than castigating and victimising a community on the Isle of Man. But for some reason, it was almost like they were baying for blood. It was. You look back and I reflect, and it was very sad to see that.
I think Robin Oak was, unfortunate to say, he was out of control. He wanted blood. I mean, we were the victims. He didn't care who we went for. I mean, I didn't use a public toilet. I was terrified. To be absolutely honest with you, I was terrified to use a public toilet on this island, even when I was campaigning. So what I used to do was go into a local pub and buy a glass of Coke just to go to the toilet and walk out. That's how bad it was, because I thought, if I go to any toilet facility, because I genuinely want to go into the toilet, I'll be arrested. That's how my mind was thinking. And every time I looked over, saw a police around me. So what I did was I'd go into a pub, I'd go, off the glass of Coke, please. I'd go to the toilet, and then I walk out without drinking the Coke, because I didn't want to go. I wanted to go to the toilet. But in my mind, if I went to a public lavatory, my view was I was going to get arrested. I thought, nope, I'm not giving them the opportunity. You know, and
Because
every time,
at that time you didn't trust the police. A lot of people were paranoid then
right?
about not getting the fair
I tell you
treatment.
right, I'll tell you right now, I don't trust the police full stop. Because even if I go to a toilet now, in the Isle of Man, a public toilet, I have my partner standing outside as my witness that I've gone to the toilet for a pee. Because I do not trust the police. I do not trust them.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've
No
got
matter
a message here.
what.
I've got a message here,
No,
Alan. Apparently, someone's talking in the background, and it's where you are on
yeah,
this. Is there some
okay,
background
just wait
noise?
1 second. Yeah,
So there we have it. Fascinating insight with Alan here, turning the clock back. You can't believe it. What I would do is recommend anyone to watch the YouTube videos. That we might even post a link online later.
yeah.
So just to summarise, really, because we're coming up to 45 minutes, we've got an island which wasn't tolerant at all, and it would appear to be that there were some key people who were basically on a campaign, and it was a society where there was nowhere to go to meet and have friendships. So try and think what would have happened if the law hadn't have changed and you hadn't have played a part in raising awareness.
Well, I'll be still out there campaigning, causing more mayhem. I mean, what I did was, I know many people will object to what I'm about to say was, and you remember South Africa and the apartheid and about sport. Athletes were banned from to participate. South Africa was banned for sports. So what we did was we heard about the Inter-Island Games in Ireland. And this is one of my ideas, unfortunately, and a few from another person called Martin.
Yeah.
And we decided, well, let's, if the Alabama want to go to a European country where they accept human rights, but they should take the consequences. So we sent faxes out to all the Pacific Islands that are in the part of the European community who accept human rights issues. And we asked them to greet the Isle of Man with a warm smile and a demonstration, which they did. And I remember on Manx Radio that there were a few boos from the audience, and they thought that was wrong. But I'm very sorry to say, politics is in sport, and if you're going to a European country that accepts human rights, then you take the consequences of it.
Well, you can't deny that about politics and sport because history will show that. But I think the way that you've looked at angles to demonstrate and carry the message forward, obviously, has paid off. So I'll just hit the fast forward button now, 30 years on. Please, just tell me, give us an insight into how much things have progressed, because there's no question about it. The constabulary have changed, the ways. There's no question about that.
They have changed. I did meet a police officer a couple of years ago, and I told him the history, which I have to explain to you, and a lot of people know the history of the videos and that's out there. And he thought I was telling an horror story, and so I think the police have polished over the history. It's lucky that I had all the videos, which I converted into DVDs. And the memories are there, because I spoke to a friend of mine at the BBC, and he said they destroyed all the films from beyond 96 and below were all destroyed. So it's lucky we've got these copies. But in my view, that the Isle of Man has moved forward. To me, it's a great place. I love the Isle of Man. The laws, I mean, I don't have nothing to do with the police, so I can't really comment on what they do. But the gay community here and the old island community it's a very good place. I mean, I've never had abuse. I see young gay couples holding hands. I see them kissing in the street. It's legal at 16. We've got gay marriage. We've got equality. to transgender community. The Isle of Man is now what I would say is a true island, a true community, an equal community.
I think it'd be fair to say that most people under 30 have got very even attitudes towards homosexuality and the community in general. I think that would be fair to say from what I've experienced. I think those of us in an older generation who've grown up in the 60s and 70s and have been schooled either here or elsewhere, it's been, what can I say? You have to learn. You've got to educate yourself. I think on the Isle of Man, where there wasn't any sign of a community, was there? When you look at it. And the communities had to change and adapt.
But so I go out now, people maybe a few years older will say I'm a hero. I'm not an hero. I'm a campaigner who fought for what I believed. There's many heroes on this island, and I was just one person from a group of people that was doing what we needed to do. I'm not a hero. I'm just me fighting for what I believe in. And if someone came banging on my door and say, "Can you help me?" I'll be out there. I don't believe, I'm a demonstrator. I'm not a demonstrator.
I think you're
I'm very pro-choice. I've always been, even when I suffered the 1991, 92 out-of-key election, I then even said that if I got in, I would legalise abortion. I'm a very strong believer on women's issues, women's rights, so it's... And the Handmaid's Tale, with the Handmaid's that was doing their stuff in Douglas, I went down there to support them. I mean, it's a good thing, the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man is, to me, a brilliant place to live.
Listen, you're one of the most progressive people to walk on this earth of the Isle, on the Isle of Man, and the impact that you've made to the community is far and wide. And it's been mentioned that hasn't been honoured enough, and there's the Tynwald honour and there's the gongs that are issued.
Believe me, I don't want any honours from the Isle of Man government. I don't need them. If you want to make an honour, give something to a charity. I don't care. I don't want any money. I mean, I do all these documentaries, and I've said to all the people that do these documentaries, and obviously they get paid, make a donation to a Manx charity. I don't want any money. I'll freely, give my information for free.
Well, it's been most enlightening talking to you. We've been chatting for 50 minutes now, and you've certainly filled in the gaps on this this trail. I don't know how to put it into words really, but when you look at 1990, you look at the late 80s, and you compare them to now, the Isle of Man is in a much better place. We can't doubt that. And whatever you say, you have been a key component in making that happen. So thank you very much.
We are having a 30th anniversary this year to mark the birthday of the costume this year. But that information won't be coming out yet.
Oh wow! Okay, that's wet everyone's whistle.
We're having a 30th birthday party for the costume. Invitations will be getting sent out at the end, and it will be. We're limited to 150 guests, so it's going to go down well.
Well, there you have it. That is a Skeetnet scoop, as it were. I'll leave you to it now. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. And anyone who's got any comments, please keep putting them in the box. Subscribe and like and share. Just spread the message. And thank you so much again, Alan.
Right, thank you very much. Have a nice evening.